Bum's voice was a mixture of gravel and rasp, like an old rusted gate that drags along the ground and grates against its hinges when someone pries it open. "Those sandwiches, I sure do like 'em." "Sure, I can get you a sandwich. You finish what's on the plate first. I'll make sure you get plenty of food to take with you," Chester said. Bum nodded and went back to gnawing on the pancetta slice. He had no front teeth to bite into the food, and so angled the meat towards his back molars and chomped down. Fat and grease smeared his mouth. He ran his tongue to the deep corners that framed his lips, licking up all the salt he dared to savor. Chester caught a glimpse of the black and brown mold-like color staining the bum's bottom front teeth. His stomach went queasy. He looked down at the table and crossed his forearms over each other. "So what's your name?" he asked when the urge to gag passed. His friend swallowed a piece of pancetta before answering. "Bum," he said, and let the half-eaten slice fall to his plate. His eyes roved over his food-stained fingers. He seemed fascinated by the sheen of fat that covered them. Chester raised his eyebrows. Bum began licking the grease off his fingertips. Chester's stomach lurched again. He pressed on, though. "Bum, that can't be," he said. "What's your real name? Your birth name?" Bum stopped licking his fingers and gazed at Chester almost as if he was offended. His reply was matter of fact. "It sure is. That's what people calls me. Hey, Bum. Hey, you bum. Get going, Bum. Get out of here, Bum. That's what people says to me all day long. Are you going to make 'em sandwiches?" "Glory sure likes 'em," he said, and then picked up his spoon and raked it across his empty plate. Chester managed a chuckle at the tone of his friend's response, as if why wouldn't he have a name like Bum? The humor of the reply even calmed the nausea rolling around on his insides. "Sure, I'll make you some sandwiches. You still hungry?" Bum's hands went to his stomach, and he nodded. "I really do like 'em sandwiches. So does Glory." "And who is this Glory? Maybe we can call this person. They probably looking for you. I think maybe you got lots of folks wondering where you are," Chester said. "Glory is at the train station. She's my wife." His answer yanked Chester forward in his seat. Alarm rang through him. "You got a what? The train station? You mean where they found the dead body?" Bum placed his hand on his thigh. His elbow poked out. "Yep, I'm a brakeman. Been working on trains for years. Glory, she works in the coffee shop." Chester scooted back in his chair until he felt rough wicker backing scratching his shoulders through his shirt. He ran his fingers over his chin, giving Bum a pensive look. He shook his head. "Well now, that was quite a job back in the day. You were responsible for making sure that each car on the train stopped, had to pull the brakes manually on each wagon. Did you ever get to throw the switch so the trains didn't crash into each other? Had to be quick on your feet, I bet." Bum looped one finger through the hole in the coffee mug handle in front of him. He nodded, and then his dirty face brightened with the widest smile, revealing a war zone in his mouth. The muscles in his thin neck popped out. Chester's stomach churned. He had to fight a gag down. "Yep. Gotta be fast. Been doing this since, oh, a long, long time. Can't remember doing anything else. I worked on the Cincinnatian, number 53 southbound, number 54 northbound," he answered with firm pride. "You don't say. Well, I take my hat off to you, sir. Brakeman was a hard, dangerous job. Had to work in all kinds of weather, walk the top of the trains, make sure nobody was hanging off the train," he said. "Oh, believe me, I've had 'em days," Bum answered. He peered into the coffee mug. So, now let me get this straight. You and your wife live in that old abandoned train station just down the way here in Corktown, where they found that dead body." Bum smiled again, and the destruction of the lower section of his mouth fully visible. His mangled teeth were like the leftover carnage of a bomb explosion. "We live in Corktown on 6th Street. Chester rubbed his chin. "Yes, I know that street. Federal Row, right?" Bum began pressing his fingers into the bits of scrambled eggs left over on his plate. "You got them sandwiches?" he asked. "Let me get you the rest of the scrambled eggs, and I'll make sure you and Glory get a couple of sandwiches each. How's that?" Bum made no reply. Instead, he was once again immersed in licking food residue from the tops of his bent fingers. Chester got up. He took Bum's plate and retreated into the kitchen through the swing doors. He turned the stove burner on low flame to warm the eggs left over in a black skillet. He couldn't just let the poor man out into the freezing temperatures. Maybe there was some kind of identification in the pockets of that bald-maned looking coat he wore. The man had to have some concerned person trying to find him. Chester wondered for a moment if Bum might actually be that old man with Alzheimer's he'd heard about on the morning news. If this was the man, how could he go about notifying the proper people? Maybe he could call the news station. Better yet, the police. His thoughts had wandered down this path when the bird in the cuckoo clock hanging on the wall above the swing doors burst out of its home and began a loud string of shrill chirps. Chester looked up. He sighed. 10 o'clock. Time to put Queen Dee's song La Mer on. Time to flick on the switch to the blinking open sign in the front window of Delvecchio's. Time to unlock the restaurant doors for the first of the day's patrons. And most urgent of all, Ulla would be returning soon. Chester knew she'd be in a foul mood, the restaurant staff would be subject to her sarcasm and insults for the rest of the day. He had just enough time to make a couple of sandwiches for Glory and Bum, and then he'd have to send his friend out into the biting cold. Chester hoped there was a warm spot somewhere in that old train station that only Bum knew about. He hoped Glory was hiding in that spot, too. Chester pictured her in his mind, huddled in a thin, bald coat that looked like a dog with mange. She was like her husband, stick-like, with bent, knobby fingers, blanketed in dark filth, with wild hair, and a body that reeked of feces and urine. Chester heaved another sigh. There had to be more he could do. He ruminated while pushing the eggs around in the warm skillet. The aroma of butter, salt, and the bit of olive oil he used to grease the bottom of the pan bloomed high in the air around him. The warmth and smell, as it popped gently around the jumble of eggs, brought a deep satisfaction to his being. And then he remembered the scripture he and his wife read together early in the morning before they parted ways. They had read about the account in Genesis about how Abel offered the fat of the firstlings of his flock to Jehovah. The fat, the best part of the animal, the rich smell pleased their Creator. Fat signified giving one's best to the Creator, like Abel had done. His wife added an additional thought to the scripture. "Reminds me of the scripture in Psalms. Oh, where is it?" She flipped through the yellow-tinged pages of a worn Bible. It took her some moments to find it. When she did, she shoved the good book at him. "Read this." Chester took the Bible from her hands and read Psalms 142, verse 2. "May my prayer be as incense prepared before you, my uplifted hands like the evening grain offering." His wife beamed a toothy smile at him. "Means our prayers are pleasant to Jehovah, Chester. Give him the fat of your life, the best of you, and offer prayers that are pleasant as incense that was in the temple." And so there was his answer. the sweet and the fat. Pray, pray for Bum. Chester bowed his head and said his prayer out loud. It was simple and direct. Dear Father in heaven, please help this man. He and his wife need a warm, safe place to stay, and they need food. You know the best way to provide this. Please accept this prayer in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. A calm came over him afterward, and then he made his way back through the kitchen swing doors with a pan full of warm scrambled eggs. He scraped the last of the content onto Bum's plate. Bum's voice was a mixture of gravel and rasp, like an old rusted gate that drags along the ground and grates against its hinges when someone